ahead, man. Fire it up.
All right. You got me?
Yeah, man, I got you.
Nick, how are you, man?
I'm well, dude. How are you?
I'm so excited about this. I'm a little bit nervous to talk to you. I just I listened to the Shawn Ryan, obviously, when I hit you up. I was blown away by it. And I want to just jump in right away. And I prepared some stuff, but I'm hoping to take this in a different direction, because I mean, people are interviewing all over the place. You're telling your story. Your story's amazing. And I've told people, hey, just, check out your TED Talk and check out, Shawn's interview, was that the longest one you've done as far as like long form?
Yeah, man, that was a long one. We were in his studio for just under 7 hours. Yeah.
Crazy. It's an amazing story. Your story is amazing. I don't want to make you blush. Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, Bronze Star with V for Valor, 5 additional awards, and the Special Operations Command Excalibur Award. Mind-boggling. And the quote from Wired magazine: if Army scientists and tattoo artists had hijacked a DARPA lab to create the ultimate soldier, they'd have created Nick. But when people say that, what do when people say that and hear that, what goes through your mind?
Yeah, well, the first thing that goes through my mind when I hear that quote is just a lot of pride because of who wrote it. Right. So the author of that article is a guy named Connor Narciso, who was actually a medic attached to my detachment in 2012 and in 2013.
Yep.
So he was a National Guard guy that they attached to our active duty SFODA specifically for that deployment. And, on the incident when, I got shot up and ultimately ended up losing my leg, there were 12 U.S. casualties, including our senior medic. So our team only had one organic medic within our actual 12-man ODA. So Connor came in to backfill that as a secondary medic. But when that incident happened, our senior medic went down, and Connor was really running the show as a National Guard guy on his first deployment as a Green Beret ever, with a bunch of guys that he had only met 5 months prior. I mean, he performed just spectacularly. I mean, literally saved lives. So when I hear that quote, I kind of laugh because it's kind of funny sounding, but more so it's just the level of pride and love I have for the dude that wrote it.
Well, it means everything, and I'm glad you said that, because I didn't mention his name. I mentioned the Wired interview, and then you brought that up because I didn't know the name, and I think it's significant because it had just been an author who met you, sees your tattoos, sees you're a badass, look at some accolades. It's a great quote, but the fact that it's from a medic who was at that incident and, like you said, save lives in there, that changes everything. I didn't know the background on that, and that makes it even freaking cooler.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit about my audience. You probably guessed it. I don't know if you've had a chance to peruse.
I have.
I'm really shadow banned. Did you get warned by Instagram? Like, hey, do you sure you want to follow this guy? He posts like controversial shit. Just ridiculous.
No, I didn't. We're good so far.
Okay, good. So mostly law enforcement, military, obviously martial artists, self-defense. But in the last few years, I've really been pushing our No Fear, KNRW fear program. This, been studying violence, fear, and aggression for decades, and it occurred to me in the 80s that the people who manage their fear manage to fight. The people who manage their fear manage to fight. It didn't guarantee victory, and that's really what I want the theme of our talk to be. A little bit different than, hey, tell us about the time you were shot up and what you did. Tell us about the time this. I want to get into, because your mindset, your intuitive adaptive courage, this the resilience you exude, first of all, is contagious and inspiring, and I think the world needs that in a big way now. So I'm excited to talk about that and your book a little bit. But I have this thought that I think every good human knows what courage looks like. We see an accident, we see something, and let's take obviously training aside, just the mindset. I believe people know what courage looks like, and then it's their inner thought, their self-doubt. I can't do this. That kind of dissuades them and talks them out of that. And I believe that a missing element in all our education is fear. If we were taught more about the psychology of fear versus the physiology of fear, I think the world would change. And I'm getting to the question here, but you've got this intuitive conscious application for managing fear that's world class. Most people would not have. You've been seriously injured 3 times, and each time you knew you were coming back. You immediately, the rehab started in your mind, and then you rebuilt your body. So, the silly question is, what's your secret? Because most other people, like after losing your leg and then deciding, well, I'm going to go deploy again, it's like, okay, calm down, Nick, right? Like, what is going on in your mind that's so different? Because that's if we could package that, we change the world.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so much there, Tony, to dive into. To answer the question, more acutely, there really isn't a secret, and I think that people, I just did a post on this morning. I think, I know a lot of people are looking for the formula. Like what's the formula to be able to do these things that lead to greatness and lead to success and lead to a lifestyle of happiness? And like, tell me the formula. And, for one, I don't think there is a formula. I think that everyone has to individualize that based on their own variables within their lives. So the equation is going to look a little different person to person to person. And how you begin to build that equation, comes from experience and wisdom and knowledge and researching and, the community you surround yourself with and who you let influence you. But it's an iterative journey that we all have to just go on, knowing that it's going to be filled with fear, to your point, pain, discomfort, doubt, insecurities, discomfort. Like that's not only part of the journey. Those are essential aspects of the journey. So, there is no secret, and I think to layer on top of that a little bit more, Tony, is I can't put a percentage against it, but let's say, around half of people that I get the chance to engage with that ask those questions, like, how did you do what you did? Many are looking for lessons learned and tools and methodologies and philosophies to learn from and then incorporate into their process along their journey, which is fantastic. And that's really what my next mission in life is, post-military service, that I've really already begun now. However, I know with certainty as well that there's a lot of people asking those same questions, whether it's to me or someone else or internally, that are really looking for that pixie dust answer, that like mystical, like what's the secret sauce? Where's the unicorn within this equation? Like, give me the quick, easy answer that gets me past all the pain and discomfort. And then making it overly complex to the point where they convince themselves that this is just too complicated and too complex or too sophisticated for me to do, which is also bullshit if it was true. But it's actually not. It's quite simple. And I think just beginning that process is having a situation, knowing where we're trying to go, and having that consistent, honest, no bullshit conversation with ourselves about our current status, our current operational environment, and if what I'm really trying to pursue is something that I really want. I feel like it's built within purpose. Or am I being influenced by, external factors, and I'm putting stuff out there because I want more likes and more follows? Like, are you really being honest with yourself about where you are and where you're trying to go? And then just know that it's actually quite simple. And it's the shit that we hear all the time. It's the discipline, it's the work ethic, and then I think that ends up scaring a lot of people because they start to see that writing on the wall and they're like, oh man, this is going to really suck at times, which it will. And then we kind of convince ourselves as to why that's not meant for us, just to avoid experiencing those things.
And that comes back to, that what I alluded to, that negative self-talk, like sometimes not sometimes, for the people that don't move towards the danger, there's that moment where like you've got the obstacle and you've got the opponent, but the real opponent is the mindset, right? How you talk to yourself, your self-coaching skills. Was this something you felt like you always had as a teenager, as an athlete? Was it something that you had specific mentors, your parents, your dad, coaches? Because there's, again, lots of people have gotten, I'll tell you, with me, I grew up afraid to compete. I never hit that flow state. I was a good all-around athlete, wrestled, gymnastics, competitive skier, but I never really podium. I was the guy that something always happened. I caught a tip, wiped out, rolled an ankle. And I knew in the back of my head, and it wasn't that I wasn't good. I was fit, I was aggressive, I was athletic, but I'd be sitting there thinking, if I'm so good, why am I so nervous? Why is my heart pounding like this? No coach, no parent had ever explained to me, this is your physiology getting ready for action. And if you didn't care so much, you wouldn't have that like performance anxiety. But I associated that with lack of skill at a certain level. And I was conflicted. And I'm talking about, like, I had these thoughts, deep thoughts, like when I was 7, 8, 10, 12. It was crazy. I didn't want to let down the team, didn't want to let down my parents, didn't want to, but it was that thought, if I'm so good, why am I so scared? And then I almost made it. And it wasn't until about 15 years later, when I was teaching self-defense and doing real scenario-based training, it was real serendipity, Nick, because I was like, oh my God, I can see this person isn't doing well here because they're afraid of the outcome, as opposed to just go, just like you've got to move, right? So did you always just know this, or did somebody grab you one day and go, hey man, like, you fell down, now you got to get up, keep moving?
Yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely had mentors throughout my entire life growing up. My father and mother, phenomenal human beings, were there. I had coaches along the entire route because athletics was kind of the one thing that was always there for me. Right. And this is critical because my upbringing, my family and I moved every 12 to 18 months from the time that I was born all the way up till when I was in college. So as a young person, being the new kid in school every year and the social challenges that brought upon, what nowadays would be looked at as bullying and is much more, appreciated for how detrimental that can be. Back when I was a kid, it was just kind of part of growing up. So I experienced that my entire life as a young person. So I lived in the world of fear and insecurity and doubt. That was just me all the time. And by the time I finally made a friend, I wanted to cling to this person with all that I had in life. I was on to the next location and on to the next school. So that challenge, was continuous. And this is critical because I learned resilience from the moment I was born, mostly because of that. And although I came home, in tears most days, and I had my father or my mother to be like, hey man, you're going to be good, buddy. Just like brush it off, keep moving forward. So they're doing what they can to empower me to continue up and get back in the game, which is nothing more than going to class the next day, in a new school. But struggling through that year after year after year after year during my entire development as a young person really is what I attribute to my learning, right? Developing the skill of resilience, of mental toughness, which then, it enabled me in athletics, which became my go-to, because no matter where I lived, there were always athletic programs that my parents could get me into. My excelling in athletics, I went on, I played in college, and I played football in college, but I played every sport there is, played 4 sports in high school. It really wasn't that I was all that athletically gifted. I was a moderate athlete in terms of size, speed, aggressiveness, but because I was so comfortable with getting my ass kicked, literally and figuratively, and enduring that and getting back up, the fear of loss gradually drifted away, where I was okay because I had lost so many times
Right.
throughout that experience as a young person. So when you fast forward to, me as a Green Beret, that really enabled me to, get through all the brutal training that's necessary to, get selected and actually go through the qualification course, and then all the challenges that come with, living in really austere environments, and, the gunfights and the explosions. Is I've been conditioned since I was created to take abuse, to establish a relationship with discomfort, and then be able to get up and continue to press regardless.
Yeah, amazing answer. Because a couple of times while you were thinking, is looking at how coddled these recent generations are, and we, like everything from cancel culture to wokeness to the coddling to everyone gets a trophy. We've eliminated, you said something and you're right. We didn't know back then, I'm 62. I grew up in the 60s and 70s when bullying was around. It was just like you said, it was part of your childhood, right? People didn't come to schools with guns and shoot up people, and there weren't, like the gang situations, and it was just part of it. And of course, this will be misread and misinterpreted, but I immediately thought we needed a T-shirt that says "Bring Back Bullying," because it ties into, and let me qualify this, not because I'm worried about the cancel culture. Bullying has severe consequences, right? We learn more about that, but there's also a correlation that nobody talks about, that type of adversity can create competence, confidence, and resilience, right? And
Absolutely,
you're walking example. So, that's an interesting thing. So
and I also, Tony, real quick, I like to highlight that story, or those details, which I don't get into often, because again, most people want to hear, tell me about you when you got shot and you got blown up and whatever. But it's really easy nowadays for the 17-year-old kid who finds me on Instagram or whatever, and who puts me on this pedestal as this like superhero figure, which I understand. And that's not true, but I get the psychology behind that. And it's an honor and it's humbling. But I thoroughly enjoy being able to emphasize this point, is while you see me in the photograph with the robot leg on the mountaintop in Afghanistan with all the cool guy equipment, right? Like, what enabled that at the core was the fact that I was a young, small, undersized, scared, insecure kid who got picked on and bullied and lost 1,000 times more than I ever won for most of my life growing up until I was in my late teens, right? So I know there are a lot of people out there, young people, teenagers, who are struggling with trying to figure out what they're trying to do. And I'm not on the popular kids table, and I'm not good at athletics. Can't really negative. It's like I lived that life myself.
Right.
So, there is, I think, to your point, there is a tremendous value in experiencing that discomfort as a young person, And I think as long as you've got some mentors around you that are able to help you see that as best as possible, which is tough when you're talking to an 11-year-old kid, but you got mentors around you and the community around you are there to support that, and then teach the fact that this is valuable. I know it hurts, man. I know it sucks. I get it. I've been there. But if you can just stick with it and keep putting one foot in front of the other, when you look back in a decade, you're going to be in a much stronger, better, more proficient, more capable position than those that had never experienced it, or those that were just coddled to the degree that that became what they needed in the time of struggle and discomfort.
That's amazing. Hang on, my dogs are going nuts. Guys. Hey, let's go. Come here. Come on. Clint. Get in here. Come here. Get in. Here. Come say hi to everybody. You just stopped the show. Come here. Come here.
I love it, man. I got 2 dogs myself, so
we got 6. These are.
Oh wow, you got the whole crew.
Yes. Say hi. Say hi. Yes, you beat it. Go lay down.
Are those Germans? Are those?
They're actually they're really a crazy. Nobody's heard of them. Our vet didn't even hear them. They're Armenian Gamper, GAMPR. Their dad was 190 pounds. They're like 8 months old.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're gonna be beasts. Crazy, very interesting breed, and how protective they are instinctively, but how mellow they are. And of course, we know they like to bark.
Good stuff.
That was so important. There's something really going on wrong with the world right now, right? You just, with just, and I don't want to turn the show into that and talk about that, but that message there, if I would love that to be a big part of your platform and your messaging, because really, as the cliche goes, our future is the kids, right? And if they're entitled and spoiled and they think they deserve everything, and if they don't get their way, they cry in your and maybe you can do a little rant on this. In your TED talk, and I'll put the links to this stuff, you talk about that, that failure and pain, it can be assets if you can reframe that properly. Life's a roller coaster ride. Why don't you share some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, Tony, one of the greatest assets that we can all choose to leverage a relationship with failure from a conceptual level all the way down to the tactical level. One, just knowing that the fact that we learn, we get better, we get smarter, the wisdom is located on the immediate backside of failing. And for competitive individuals or those that have, a more traditional relationship with failure, it's like, I don't fail at anything. I will never fail. It's like, well, that's probably not true, for one. And two, if you can modify that and look through it through a different lens and see the value in it, then the sooner you're going to begin stalking those moments to happen. And then really to fast forward to that point, you almost can become a reckless maniac, because you're pursuing failure with such aggression that it turns into the realm of recklessness, right? So, then incorporates our strategy and our approach and our research to kind of keep that on that, what I use is the line between determination and madness, where we're living truly at the edge of our capability with consistency. But it took me a while to kind of grow and learn that, especially as an athlete and as someone competitive and someone who ended up building up this false sense of security and ego, somewhat narcissistic, that like, I don't ever lose. Well, if that honestly is the case, then you're just not pushing the envelope fast enough. You're not running with enough aggression, because it's really easy to argue and to understand that's what training oftentimes is. It's controlled and deliberate failure, and like in the fight house, that's like the greatest example of that. If I walk into the dojo as a purple belt, which is what I am, and I'm training up against a bunch of white belts and I just annihilate 10 out of 10, I probably didn't get a whole lot of value out of that training session. I probably didn't learn a whole lot. It's when we go up against someone that's better than us, or someone that's at around the same level, and we lose, and then we analyze, well, what the hell just happened? Okay, I moved left. I tried this sweep. It didn't work. I tried to transition here. I tried this submission before I was in the right position. And that's where we get better. And I think the key to it, man, and this ties into fear as well, the key to it is having enough confidence to let that failure hit our pride and our ego, which hurts and is uncomfortable, but be okay with that, and then learn the value from it, and then continue to get back up and continue to move forward, where we're able to work smarter while we're working hard. You combine those two things together, and you just become a lethal weapon that is to be dealt with.
Yeah, I love that. And it made me think of a quote that I've been using in my own life and sharing, that you never know how much you can do until you try to do more than you can. You never know how much you can do until you try to do more than you can. And it's like if someone says, hey, like the standard here is 25 push-ups in this much time, and that's all you do, and you never try to do, well, how fast can I do 50, or how many can I do 100 clean ones? It's just pushing that envelope. And like in performance psychology, I love to talk to my athletes about the difference between capacity and potential, and then awesome. to design their map, their mental map. From that, it's interesting, because I've always thought of words as icons, and the word failure, even the word fear, like at an unconscious level, especially type A personalities, which is probably everyone listening to the show. Well, we don't like to talk about vulnerability or fear or failure. I don't lose. I'm not afraid of anybody, blah, blah, blah. Here's an interesting thing that popped in my head just as a reframe. Do you get nervous when you're competing in jiu-jitsu and grappling? You get nervous before events?
Of course.
Now, this is crazy, because like, guys, listening to this again, Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts, Bronze Star. What I love about that answer and the look on your face there is, if you were grappling in a tournament and it was your purple belt, you've been grappling, get all this experience, and everyone that showed up in an open tournament was a white belt, you'd go, okay, I guess I'm going to win today, right? But as soon as there's people your level or better, you get the performance anxiety, you got the fear, because no one likes to lose. And what allows you to just lean into the fear and use fear as fuel is your mindset, which this either both mentored and the competency created because of all the moves, the resilience. I'm okay with losing. I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to bounce back better. I love that. I just got to marinate a little bit in that, because the answer could have been, no, I'm not afraid of grappling. I've been in gunfights. Why would I be afraid of like a grappling match? And it's a subtle thing, because if I asked you, you're going to grapple this guy, are you afraid that he's going to kill you in this fight? You go, no. Like, if this is sport and there's risk and danger, and battle is completely different. That wasn't the question. And everyone listening, I want you to listen to how much self-awareness Nick had and his answer there, that anytime you go outside your comfort zone and you step outside that, if you care about the outcome, you're going to be nervous. Now, it's self-awareness that allows you to step back and go, okay, what are these feelings? That's what I was missing as a kid. But anyways, I got goosebumps thinking your answer was great, man. I love it.
No, dude, you nailed it. Which is why I think competition is a critical aspect of development, regardless of your age. Because the second you go into competition mode, which makes most people nervous, whether they want to admit it or not. Again,
Right.
ego and pride, like, nah, man, no fear. I don't fear anything. It's like, okay. There scientifically, neurologically, there is a minute condition where people's actual brains have a deficiency, which exists. Right. It's incredibly rare.
Yep.
That so you can say with mathematical certainty, 99.9998% of human beings experience fear because it's programmed into us as human beings. The human brain is responsible for a lot of different things, but the thing it's most responsible for is our survival. And fear is one of those alerts that is there to keep us alive. That's not only just physically, but also emotionally, because our emotional wellness, our psychology, is directly tied to our actual physical health, which just shows what an amazing organism the human body is, and the human brain. It's like, I'm gonna drop this fear alert right now, not because I'm concerned about you breaking your neck or breaking your leg, which would be bad, but I want to protect your pride. I want to protect your emotional capacity as much as I can, because it's in our best interest for survival. Well, while that may be true, there are a lot of times, man, when, pushing past that, ignoring what our brain is telling us to do, and instead listening to our heart that says, no. Yeah, I'm going to extend, and I'm going to be vulnerable, which is why I'm nervous, because I could lose. That could hurt my pride. My wife is here, my kids are here, my coach is here, my teammates are here. If I lose, it's going to be embarrassing. But you know what? On the backside of that is the development. Like, that's where the growth exists. That's how you get better and you progress. So suck it up, execute. And when you do that and you fight through that discomfort, and then you get in the back end, whether you win or lose, man, there's this enormous dopamine rush of happiness and satisfaction, regardless of the outcome. And you hug your competitor, and you hug the other coaches, your teammates are there, and they're like, hey, man, that was like great work. You got your ass kicked. We have a lot to work on, which we just learned. You yourself are going to realize that although it was scary, it really wasn't nearly as bad as we had thought it was going to be when we put ourselves in that worst case environment. So, man, there are many times when listening to our brain has value. You're standing on the roof of a 30-foot building. Like, I probably don't want to jump off because it would probably kill me. But again, like, just establishing that relationship with fear and failure and discomfort to be able to leverage the moments in which, no, now's the time to push through it anyway. And then you do that again in repetition, and then you just build this degree of confidence and capacity that becomes, again, man, you do become an actual weapon.
I love it. I'm wearing my fuck fear shirt today, and fuck the fuck is an acronym for face it, understand it, control it, know it. And it's
love that, man.
I'll send you one, dude. It's this idea that we can learn from fear by leaning into fear, by making fear our fuel for action. This idea of, holy shit, I just got this fear spike. And I love to distinguish between the physiology of fear and the psychology of fear, because there's instinctive response to, like, looking over the edge of a building or hearing gunfire or just that danger. But then the feelings in your body can trigger the psychological response. And I love another acronym I love is false expectations appearing real. Mm-hmm. It's when I'm visualizing something in the future that involves my pain, my failure. It's a doomsday movie in my mind, but it's debilitating me in the present. And that affects my relationships, who I communicate with, how much weight I lift, whether I mean, you probably know, talented grapplers or fighters who are like, man, that guy was moved really slow to that problem, or this guy just never shows up when it's on the line. Something always comes up. And I think when you said earlier in our talk about again, just guesstimating 50-50 people who are actually half the population are actually trying to learn and be inspired and motivated, and half are looking for some magic unicorn quick fix when they realize, and this comes back to like me growing up in the 60s and 70s going, man, if Instagram existed back then and I was 8 years old and stumbled across your story and heard this stuff, I really believe that changes how I associate and relate to fear. Hearing somebody, some 17-year-old who's on Instagram, hearing you talk about the roller coaster ride of life, and that you can actually learn every time you fail. You can actually learn from your pain. That's not a common message or languaging, even in today's world.
No, it's not. You're right.
And it needs to be out there.
Yeah, you're right.
In the interest of time and out of respect for your time, I want to talk about your book, Objective Secured. I got it just before I took off on a trip. I was hoping to read it, and I didn't. So I'm talking about your book without reading it, but I did read a few pages of it, and I loved. And I just want to share this. Right in the beginning, author's intent here. Just you sent it like your orders just came in. Reader will absorb the principles and vignettes of the objective secured at all times, locations suitable, etc. Expanded purpose. But I love the key tasks. I'm not going to read the whole book here. Read, ruminate, implement. You, dude, are a very eloquent knuckle dragger. I'm making a joke here because it's like, oh, that guy's a warlock, and that guy's your fucking language, the way you speak and articulate, it's very counterintuitive, like the way we stereotype people.
Sure. Sure.
You're right. Are you a voracious reader, or you were good in school, or is this like, because you got a crazy vocabulary, but you have amazing self-awareness and like I ask you one question, I can sit back and you'll talk for 15 minutes. You've got thoughts. So where'd all that come from, man? It's impressive.
Yeah, it didn't come from me as an academic as a kid. I was a horrible student through high school. Only reason why I went to college was to play football, and in college I did the bare minimum to stay eligible, and that was really it. I wasn't nearly the academic as I consider myself to be now. I think most of my intelligence has developed since I entered the military, coming to the special operations community, and my first portion of my career was mostly physical. I was the knuckle dragger. I was the physical guy. I was the MMA fighter and the football player, and 6'6", 250. Like when my team needed that type of stuff, I was there to do it. And it was great because I enjoyed it. It really wasn't, Tony, until I lost my leg. I'm in the hospital. I make up my mind that I'm going back to the team. And eventually, which fortunately happened relatively quick for me, it was tough to swallow, but I recognized that no matter how much time I spent in the weight room, on the track, in the pool, I was not going to be as physically dominant as I was with two legs. It's not going to happen. So how do I bridge that gap between lose physically in order to remain an asset to my teammates? And that's when I really began looking at kind of the softer side of our business, the things that most don't think about, but they're critical in us being successful. And I'm talking about, campaign planning and military strategy and targeting methodology and geopolitics, foreign culture, foreign language, right? So like all these other things that I wanted nothing to do with as a two-legged guy, I saw the value in investing myself in those things to, again, be the asset that I knew I needed to be. So it began in the hospital, which is rather than reading about kinesiology, exercise physiology, or nutrition or marksmanship, like the stuff I enjoyed, I was now investing time and energy into studying all these other things. And then when I got out of the hospital, I put myself into all these, advanced military schools that I needed waivers to get into because they were reserved for like really senior leaders like colonels and command sergeants major. I was in these types of courses learning strategy and operational continuum type stuff, which, you know, broadened my intelligence just as a human. But then I was able to take those exact lessons and apply them to my own personal life, because I was in the middle of going through this journey of earning my way back onto the team. And that's really where my strategy and my approach and my tactics really got cleaned up, because prior to that, I was really just doing a whole lot of shit. Once I began to learn what this was like, I applied it to myself. And then I realized the value in it once I eventually deployed again as an amputee for the first time. And I employed those different skill sets and capabilities for the greater good of the team and the mission. It kind of came full circle, right? I mean, I was operating on faith at that point, but I saw the effects and I was like, wow, there's actually something to this. And then I realized, you know, as much as I enjoy lifting weights and moving fast and blowing shit up, the most dangerous weapon in the human body is our brain and is our mind. And the second we can appreciate that and begin to grow it the same way we want to grow our muscles or our body or our physical skills, the sky truly becomes the limit, man, at that point. So, no, man, no formal training. You know, the writing thing was just kind of a venture that I took off on. And, you know, fortunately, I had some people around me to help me kind of clean it up. But yeah, man, it was kind of one of those things I just decided to do and figured it out as I went along.
It's captivating, and obviously share a little bit about the kind of like organic, intuitive way the book came together, because it wasn't like you sat there and went, "Oh, I'm going to be I've got to plan my exit strategy and I'll write a book and become a speaker," right? I mean, it was interesting. You shared a little bit of it on Shawn's show, but share with my audience.
Yeah. So, dude, I mean, it was a gradual process. Again, when I got back from the 2015 Afghanistan trip, which was my first deployment as an amputee, I kind of got shoved into the limelight a bit. You know, the Army and the special operations community wanted to kind of highlight what we did and how we did it. And I really pushed back against that, because I embraced the quiet professional mentality and lifestyle. And, you know, I'm a warrior and I'm here to do a job. I'm not here to be in the press. Well, you know, it was framed to me a couple different ways from people that I respect, that, you know, this isn't about you seeking fame or fortune. This is about you giving back to the people coming up behind you that are struggling to do something. You owe it to them to kind of get out there a little bit. So it was a gradual progression of me moving into kind of the public space more and more and more. And as I did that, the questions began to come in. Basically, how did you do what you did? And, you know, a lot of that was with new amputees or people that are dealing with some kind of other injury. And then that kind of broadened out, and people that were dealing with adversity that had ambitious dreams and goals. How did you do what you did? How did you do it? So I'm answering these questions, really the same one over and over and over and over again, hundreds, thousands of times. I'm like, okay, man, I'm just going to jot this down. I'm actually going to put a little thought into it. I ended up creating, it was like a 7-9 page Microsoft Word document on my computer that just outlined that process. It was just like a phased model, like step 1, step 2. I talked about mentality, mindset, like what I was thinking at those times and how I learned that they were important. Tactically, what was I doing? What did my training regimen look like? What times did I go to sleep, right? So I put some thought into it, created this thing, and then I used that to answer those questions for the course of like a year or two. And then, you know, COVID comes around in early 2020, and I got a lot of extra time and energy on my hands. And one of my really good buddies over 20 years, he hits me up and says, "Hey, man, I think you need to write a book," out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, I'm not writing a book. I have no interest in doing something like that. And in my mind, he was thinking about, you know, like an autobiography, like let's tell like the Nick Lavery story. And I'm like, nah, get out of here.
I got to interject here.
Yeah, please do.
When that the story is so much cooler with the Boston accent. Like just the way you say, "I ain't writing a book." Just it's just go on. I had to say that because it's so distinct and come out. But go ahead. He tells you got to write.
Yeah.
A book.
So yeah, well, you'll appreciate it even more, Tony, because we're working on the audio book here in a couple months, and I'll be narrating a good portion of it. So if you don't like the Boston accent, that book probably isn't going to be for you. So, he's like, hey, let's write a book. I think you need to. I'm like, no, I'm fighting it. Out of respect to him, I did give it a little bit of thought. Even for us in the military with COVID 2020, we were doing this weird like telework thing, and half the team could come in on one day, the other half the other day. Like no one knew how to deal with it. I ended up having a lot of extra bandwidth that I otherwise would have spent at work. I don't really do well with idle time. So I said, you know what? We had another conversation. I said, yo, E, I kind of have this product that I've been using to answer this question as to how. And he's like, I think you just keep running with that, man. Just keep running with it and keep writing and keep adding to it. And so I did. I started referencing my training logs and my journals, and I just kind of kept adding to it. And I really caught the bug for writing, which is weird to still say now, because prior to that, if you would ask me if I enjoyed writing, the answer would have been absolutely not. But I found out that one, I really did enjoy it. I learned that there was a great therapeutic value for me in terms of my own mental wellness. But I really enjoyed the analysis part of it, like looking at my training log and matching that up against my journal around the same time and going, here's what I was doing at this point in time. Here's how I was training. Here's how I was eating. Here's how I was feeling, and kind of correlating those things. I just enjoyed kind of the more objective analytical process that I was going through while I was writing. And I think that's really what I got hooked on, man.
I think also you're an instinctive coach. You are a natural mentor. I mean, at this point in your life, you recognize that. And I think the writing, while you were saying that, it was almost like when you write a good sentence paragraph and it takes you 5 minutes or 5 hours and you go, this is what I want to say, and this is going to have this impact. It's like combining battle planning and deployment and execution in your mind, but it's on paper. It's very cathartic. I love it. I write during the pandemic. I wrote a newsletter 5 days a week for the first year.
Wow.
Like and I would sit there because you've got, again, like you said, extra bandwidth. You got this extra time. People are scared. People are freaking out all over. And I was writing about mindset and fear and resilience and basically mental health without calling it, calling it that. But very, very cool. I think the reason that you like it is just that it's almost like the words are the ammo, and the mission and your field of fire, without it being impacting in a negative way. It's your audience is stepping into the kill zone, right? And this metaphor is backfiring because I'm spitballing it, but you know what I mean. It's like,
yeah, no, you're right.
Boom, I got to go. And I really think, as somebody who writes a lot and loves it, like my wife is saying, what are you writing so many newsletters for? You don't need to put out, like, nobody wants to read from you 5 days a week. Like, everyone gets too much email. Our open rate's like 35%.
Great.
And it's crazy. I go, I'm writing for me. I'm like, I love this. You're getting those ideas on paper and helping one person go, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And the project, which is obviously turned into a 270 whatever page book, is still very much what it was intended to be, and the way it was used back when it was a 9-page Microsoft Word document. It still is that guide and that manual to goal achievement through overcoming adversity. There's enough personal examples and vignettes in there that I felt was appropriate to give a reader enough context into what I was experiencing when I realized the significance of this particular tenet. But I want to emphasize this, because the greatest piece of negative feedback that I've received about the book so far is that people want the autobiography. They're like, well, this was cool. Thank you for the textbook, but I want your story. So I just want to put out as loud and often as I can, this very much is not my memoirs. It's not the Nick Lavery story at all. It's this personal development piece framed off of what I did and what I was thinking while I was going through my time post-injury and then getting myself back to the team up really through the time that I wrote the book.
Yeah. And let me add on that, as fascinating as your story is, what you just said is like, hey, this is how I did what I did to the best of my recollection. And this is the formula. This is, you mentioned survival earlier, and I throw in Maslow's hierarchy of needs at the bottom tier of that, like survival, self-actualization at the top. If we all want to be happy and we all want to be the best version of ourselves, right? It's everything we've talked about today, understanding fear, understanding how to navigate life's, peaks and valleys. The autobiography isn't going to give you the ammo. It's this book. It's what you did here. And I just wanted to point that out to everyone, like listening. And you could listen to, again, go to the Shawn Ryan interview and other talks, and you'll get all of those, the stories, which are insane. But as soon as I heard about the book, I knew I wanted to get it, because I'm always looking for, and I'm 62, and there's I'm always looking for what is one idea, one thought that's going to inspire me to think differently, and that's going to change like who I am fundamentally. There was something I read in the 80s. This how's it go? It's be willing to give up who you are today for who you could become tomorrow.
Yeah, man. Boom.
So I can't wait to, like I said, I had high hopes of reading it, but I literally was in Vegas for 5 days for 2 training events, and then got back and I was smoked. It was the first time we had 70 people. This was amazing.
Awesome.
But it was the first time I had done anything standing for 6-7 hours, demoing for hours, talking for 8 hours in almost 3 years. So my
awesome.
My body was like, ugh, but then at night I was like, wow, am I 60,
yeah, man.
90? It was good. Other aside from you said the most positive feedback you got is, hey, where are the memoirs? What's the response been like for this?
Yeah, Tone, dude, it's been tremendous. It's been almost overwhelmingly humbling, and the feedback really ranging from, hey man, great book, thank you for your service, I learned a couple things, appreciate it, which is great, all the way to the more extreme example I've gotten a couple similar, is one I'll never forget, from a wife of a guy who attempted suicide, and she had stumbled upon, I think it was my YouTube, and found the book, bought the book, ordered it, put it in front of him. And her words was, he's doing really, really well now. So thank you for what you did. And,
Amazing.
I don't take credit as being like the catalyst for something like that, but just to be a small pot of a 180 like that, man, I don't know how you quantify that type of value and impact that it has on me, which really just strengthens my desire to continue to pursue this, because I know there's value. I continue to look at it as a responsibility, even though it is a nights and weekends venture, at least for now, because I'm an active duty member of the United States Army. But I do know what my future looks like, Tony. I got 5 more years of active duty service, which I'm going to savor because I love what I do. But it also gives me 5 more years to kind of establish a foundation, create the network, create the relationships, so that once I get that retirement paperwork in my hands, this is what I will do full time.
Amazing.
Which is exciting. And, I think, not to go off on a track, but a lot of the service members, they struggle with transitioning, mostly because they kind of kick that can down the road and it sneaks up on them. And all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, I'm a civilian. What do I do now? So lack of preparation, but then also trying to fill a void to do something, live a lifestyle that has that same level of seriousness and much of emotion attached to it as we have as service members. I'm very blessed that I've already figured out what that is for me. So I am, I'm equally excited to continue to do what I do now, but I'm also growing more and more in love with having that type of an effect on on others, and then having that impact that it creates on myself, and really being able to do that, full time here in the next, 5 years.
That's amazing. And that story, you couldn't see it, and I'd heard it because you shared it on Shawn's show. The goosebumps I just got now, from that message from that husband, the wife. But if you can change somebody's life, how amazing is that, right? But if you can save somebody's life, and that's kind of what I was trying to allude to before, when I held up the book and I said, look, yeah, we want to hear your story because it's inspiring and cool, but in the same way I wanted to interview you right away, because I wanted to, I didn't want to go, so tell me about the time you got shot.
Right.
It was like, how's this guy's mind work? How's it wired? And to go full circle to like your original answer, you didn't spit out some cookie cutter bullshit. Well, step one, when you're shot, do this next. Oh, when you're scared, do this next. It was like, it was very analytical, methodical, and honest about it's going to change for every person. But I think the undercurrent and what I believe this is about, and the message is about, is you need to show up every day. You need that the relationship between having a plan, what your vision is, what your mission is, what is today's task, and to not deviate from that. And that involves, from my perspective, like where I operate from, I go, well, doubt, hesitation, procrastination. If you dig deep, there's going to be fear at the bottom of that.
Sure.
And that's my whole thing. And if people can improve that self-awareness piece, what am I hesitating for? Why am I scared to make this call? What am I in? So this was super, super cool, man. I got, you've already answered my last question, was what are your goals out of the military, which I knew, but I did have a little note to talk about. I wanted to talk about the Peter Ortiz Award.
Oh, wow.
Am I pronouncing his last name right? Is it Ortiz or Ortiz?
Ortiz. Yeah, Ortiz.
Yeah. Why don't you share that, because it's kind of a cool story, and certainly an amazing nod and gesture. And
yeah, man, dude, that was in 2019, which was the last Donovan Award dinner that they've done, because COVID shut it down. They're doing it again this year for the first time since, but that's the last time that they've done it. Actually, the director of that event, his name's Charles Pink, whose lineage is of General Donovan. He and I just spoke, ironically, I think it was yesterday or the day before. But they reached out, and I was submitted for that by other people within my chain of command, and I actually didn't know that it was happening until I kind of was eventually attached to some email traffic and said, okay, cool. And then it turns out that I was going to be given this award, and it's at this big banquet in Washington, D.C. And, I'm an active duty member on an SF detachment that has a lot of stuff going on every single day, which is my focus. And I was brand new warrant officer, so I was now in this different position of leadership, so it was on the back burner. Not even on the back burner. It was like not even on my radar while it was happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, Nick, you need to be in Washington on this date to accept this award. I was like, oh shit, like what do I do with this? And I struggle with it, like, okay. But I ended up researching about Peter Ortiz himself and like the namesake of the award. And then it just became this incredible honor. The most decorated member of the OSS, which is really the genesis of the Army Special Forces, which is, the unit that I'm a part of now. And just reading his backstory and how much of a badass this guy was and the things that he did, it was almost overwhelming that I was going to be accepted an award in his name at an event like this in DC with 900 people within the special operations and intelligence communities. I reference it in Objective Secure. It's actually how I opened the book is with that story that I refer to as Spy Prom, which is kind of the synonym underbelly name of that event. And that's how the book opens up. It's with that event. So yeah, I mean, just an incredible honor. And what enabled me to get up there and do my acceptance speech was that I was being handed an award, but I was merely a representation of the guys I work alongside of in that moment, my teammates that were there alongside of me to enable me and support me to get back to the team after I lost my leg, the guys that I was working with in the hospital, like all the people that were involved in getting me from where I was to that moment on stage. I was accepting that on behalf of all of them, right? And I'll just close here, Tony, by saying, the term self-made is one of the most ridiculous terms there is. And I understand what people say, what they mean when they say that, right? Like grinding from the ground up and digging in. But without question, there are going to be people and or opportunities that have been presented to you that have enabled and supported that along that journey. And although I had to trailblaze down this path that hadn't been walked before, the only reason why I was able to be successful at that is because of the people that I had around me. So in the moment on that stage, really, I was a representation of all those guys and gals.
Amazing story, man. So glad I got to meet you officially. I heard about you, then listened to the show, and very, very inspiring. And I'm super excited, grateful that you gave me the time to share this with my audience. Most of them, like I said in the beginning, are active duty, retired, coming out of law enforcement, military. Obviously, lots of martial arts instructors and self-defense instructors, and but I think forget Nick's profession. It's again the way he conducts his life, the ideas of resilience, and how instinctively and naturally we use different terms, but you've managed fear as a youngster, moving every 12 months, the bullies and look at that and how that has created that. In many people, you could have turned out like bitter and angry and with a whole victim mindset. And so everyone listening to this, that's that perspective of, looking at that roller coaster ride, those failures, the obstacles, and thinking this, if I learn from this experience, it's going to make me a better person. It's going to expand my comfort zone. And that's really ultimately what life's about. Dude, anything I didn't ask you that you wish we talked about, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, I got one thing, Tony, is that this is an honor for me, man. You are an absolute legend and icon in the special operations community, particularly in the combatives world, but that expands very quickly over into just the tactical world, especially the way in which we train in the incorporation of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat and self-defense within what we do within close quarters combat in general. You are an absolute legend. I'm going to go off here for a second. I grew up boxing, transitioned into wrestling, transitioned into MMA stuff, and then some martial arts, and then eventually jiu-jitsu and combatives. I got in the Army, and that was my first job when I got out of the hospital, was as a SOC P instructor, which is what I did for ended up being almost a year before I ended up making it back on the team. That lifestyle, and I'm preaching to the absolute choir here, is just a fundamental core attribute, dead on balls. If you really want to get down to the why, there's several whys and hows, but that community and what that instills in human beings in terms of confidence, focus, structure, discipline, technique, it begins with what we can do with our own body. And that warrior mindset really begins in that arena. And any weapon that I put in the hands of a soldier or a service member or a special operations operator, all that does is increase the range of the lethality and the effectiveness of the weapon, which is the human. And what you do and how you do it, not only does that inspire that from a mental perspective, but it reinforces it through what we can do physically. The Blower suit, which was, just a technological marvel, whether or not they're using that system like specifically today, because there's other variants that have come around since then. I'm telling you right now, everyone refers to that as the Blower suit, right? So, which is really cool. in itself. And I'm talking about guys that don't live in the combatives world, like other leaders that talk about training. This just happened. I'm not bullshitting you. This past week, one of our sergeants major, we were in a brief. We were talking about how we're going to change our SOC-P program. It doesn't matter. He mentioned the blower suit by name. He's like, yeah, we'll get some guys with some blower suits. So, I mean,
Amazing.
what you've done from a business perspective, from an actual product perspective, what you give to people and industries in terms of their mentality, coupled with what they can do physically, is I can't stress enough, man, how much I and we appreciate what you've done, the amount of time and service and energy you've invested into this. And as someone who literally puts my life and my teammates' life in the hands of what we're able to do when things get real, and be able to come back to these techniques and philosophies that you instill in people all around the world, I can't possibly thank you enough for what you've done, man. So as much as you say it's an honor to talk to me, man, I can assure you it's times 10 back the other direction. I'm a fan for life. I know you do stuff all over the country. I would love the chance to link up at the same place at the same time, and maybe kind of create some kind of a hybrid to your clients and students and those that you serve, man. So thank you very much for today. I look to keeping the conversations going.
Dude, seriously, to hear that from somebody like you, I'm going to take that last little part there and play it to my kids. Go listen to this. Listen to this. This is talk about Dad. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to get it on rewind on my phone and just listen to it all the time. It's nice. I'm literally blown away by what you just said. Thank you.
It's true, man. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't. I don't bullshit. So genuinely, all the respect, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, thank you for your service. Thank you for your time. I will definitely. I'll shoot you my cell number in the DM. I live near San Diego. You're coming out here soon to see another badass and talk to him. And if I'm around, I'm taking off next week. If I'm around, we'll definitely get together, have a beer, glass of milk, whatever you're doing, and talk about shit. True honor, man. True honor. And thank you for everything you do. Thank you for as amazing as your career has been. I will say this. What you're going to do for the world after with your story is going to eclipse what you did in the military, because it's a shit show what's going on in the world, and we need strong men who are inspiring young people to look at things differently, and we need more critical thinking and self-awareness, and your mission and your story is going to help that.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon, Tony. Yeah. All right, man. Stay safe.
Thanks. You too.